Hey, this is Jerry Akin at Pierce Chapel. Thank you for joining me for this week's midweek meditation. This past Sunday, we talked about the first sign or miracle that Jesus did in the Gospel of John, and that's when he turned water into wine. This sort of kick-started his public ministry. But what's interesting is if you go back and you look at that passage in John 2, it says that his disciples saw this and they believed in him. They were amazed by him. And that means that he had disciples before he was doing this kind of stuff. And they hadn't seen anything miraculous yet, but they were already following him. Now, right after this, it says Jesus went into the temple and he took a whip made of cords and he drove out the money changers and all the people that were making a mockery of God's house. And he said that his Father's house was a house of prayer. He was not going to let them make a mockery of it. And again, it says that his disciples saw this. So he had followers who were probably at this point thinking, what in the world have we gotten ourselves into? How do you think they felt? Do you think they felt scared, afraid, or maybe they felt empowered, bold, excited? Right after this event, Jesus goes on to say, "Tear down this temple and I will build it again in 3 days." Of course, he was talking about himself, but they didn't know that yet. They were very confused by what he was saying. And then the passage concludes by saying that Jesus knew what everyone was thinking. No one had to tell him what was in their heart or in somebody else's heart because he already knew that. So when we look at this all together, we see, first of all, Jesus had disciples. The disciples were amazed. The disciples were confused. And then Jesus already knew what was in their hearts, what was in their minds. This gives me great comfort because there are times when I'm following Jesus where I'm confused. I don't understand what he's up to. There are times where maybe I'm following Jesus where I'm afraid of what's happening and I don't see how this is going to pan out. But when I read this and I see that even the earliest disciples went through this, it brings me comfort. It gives me a little bit of peace of mind and heart to know that Jesus has always been one step ahead of all of his followers. We don't always understand him. Sometimes he confuses us. Sometimes we're bewildered. Sometimes we're frightened. But he understands us. He always knows us better than we know him. He's always one step ahead. And that is why we follow him.